Congressman, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
So in the last few days, President Trump has increased pressure on Russia. He's agreed to send more defensive weapons and equipment to Ukraine. Are you on board with that support for Ukraine?
Absolutely. Always have been. I've been very consistent in this. I'm not going to flip-flop based on anybody's individual opinion. I spent over 20 years in the military, spent some time over in that area. I've actually been to Kyiv since this war has kicked off. I understand this is a top 10 country, actually top 5 country really in the world for resources. It's strategically important to us and important to NATO countries who border that country. Russia's a bad actor. They acted on bad faith. They went against the peace accords that were signed, that they signed in the Budapest Accords when Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons when they left the USSR. This is a bad thing to happen for the rest of us. It's going to actually financially impact us for those America First people. It benefits us to have this country on our side. If Russia takes their assets, which controls 70% of European grain and a ton of rare earth minerals, which we have contract with now, as well as titanium, steel, cobalt, uranium, you name it, that all is going to be disseminated to North Korea, Iran, China, people that aren't friendly with us. And I think it's in our best interest, financially and otherwise, to have them on our side.
Now, the president's critics will say, look, Putin is a known entity. We know that he cannot be trusted,
Sure.
that these past 6 months, he's been essentially playing the president of the United States. Why do you think it took so long for President Trump to get to the point where he says, you know what, Putin's BSing us?
Yeah, well, President Trump's been relying on his former relationship with Putin, that he would come around, that he could actually be a peace broker in this process. But Putin has not been playing by normal rules. He has not been a good actor, and I've said all along this guy is not to be trusted. President Trump has come to that conclusion and now is turning up the pressure. Quite frankly, financially, we could hamstring Russia. Since they're reliant so much on their oil, we turned up pressure on India and undersold them in India. We could actually shut down the Russian economy. And simultaneously, we could provide Ukraine with enough weaponry to really do damage to Russia, and even with a 30,000 influx of Koreans there. Look at what Ukraine did in the first year. They took out 50% of Russian armor.
Can
and almost
we
a
really
million
shut
casualties.
down Russia's economy, given that China will still buy their energy?
One country is not going to sustain this war. And we can actually make it hard
Even
on
if
China.
it's China.
Well, yeah, China, 1.47 billion people. I get it. The second largest economy in the world, about $17 trillion per year. But we can make things a little bit hard on China, too. I don't think China, they have a precarious relationship with Russia, always have. Even though they see politics maybe similarly, they are rivals, both economically and militarily.
I want to ask you about your colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican who said, quote, this is on X, MAGA did not vote for more weapons to Ukraine. MAGA voted no more U.S. involvement in foreign wars. I know you disagree with that, but isn't that where what she's calling MAGA voters are?
Well, I don't think MAGA can be classified as one thing. I keep on saying, we're not a cult. If you're in a church and everybody believes exactly the same thing and one person gets to dictate that, that's a cult. We're not a cult. We're a diverse culture even inside the Republican Party. We can have a disagreement and it's okay. Not everybody believes that America first means America only. As a matter of fact, this is a world economy. When you look at strategically what allies we have to have in this world, it's important to have friends around the world. And I would say it's financially important to us. And it does put America first to have strong allies around the world.
Congressman Rich McCormick is with us in the studio. If you'd like to give a call and talk to him, you can do so. You can start calling now. Democrats are on 202-748-8000, Republicans 202-748-8001, and Independents 202-748-8002. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov responded to President Trump. He said this, quote, "We have already had an unprecedented number of sanctions imposed against us. We're managing. I have no doubt whatsoever that we will cope." You disagree with that? Do you think that they're coping now?
Yeah, they're also putting, what, about 8% of their GDP into their military. They're not friendly with most nations in the world, especially in Europe. This is going to continue to get worse for them over time. They will cope, but what does that mean? Eventually, the oligarchs are going to rise up against Putin. Eventually, you're going to run out of Koreans, and the Koreans are going to get tired of this war as well. But they do. In warfare, they are a meat grinder. Look what they did during the Gulag Archipelago era, which from 1917 to 1957, about 60 million people died in Russia. This control, these people, that heritage of that, and you listen to what Putin does, he quotes Peter the Great, Catherine the Great. In order to secure my borders, I must expand them. He is a Russian Empire sort of mentality, and that needs to be defeated.
Pivoting now to the Epstein files. I know it's a hard pivot from Ukraine, but as you know, that there is a lot of discussion since the Department of Justice has decided to not release any additional files. Where are you on that? Do you still support, or do you support the Attorney General?
I support full transparency. I think the more information's out there, the better we look. I'm like that with almost every issue, unless it's something that's of national security that's going to compromise us, such as the military. Something that would put us at a disadvantage. But I don't see how this, unless they know something I don't know, and they probably do, the question is, why don't they release the files? I think it's a populist item. I mean, both Democrats and Republicans want to see what's in the files. Now, I'm sure there's some important people.
President Trump wants to move on from this issue and doesn't want to, it would appear that he doesn't want those files released.
But the American
since
public
that's his
still,
Department of Justice.
No, I get it. But the American public still doesn't agree with that. And I'm sure President Trump will use the bully pulpit to convince people of what he wants to convince them of, and that's the president's prerogative. But I think the vast majority of people want to see those files released.
Let's talk about the what's called the Big Beautiful Bill, passed on July 3rd. You said this on X, quote, "There is no way to get everything you want as a fiscal conservative, but this is a significant step forward in addressing the nation's most pressing issues of keeping businesses thriving and putting Americans to work." What are the parts that you did not like about that bill?
I'm a budget hawk. I believe that we are far too far in deficit spending. We're going to actually expend our deficit spending next year by almost $500 billion. The next year, the same. That's not good for the American future. We may have a golden era now, but we're going to have that come to pay in the next presidency. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. It's simple math. Social Security will go bankrupt in about 7 years, which means it's going to have an automatic 21% cut without a vote. 21% cut to benefits unless we expand our debt even more grossly. Same thing with Social Security. Same thing with Medicare. It's going to go bankrupt within the next presidency, almost certainly, and it's going to have an automatic 11% cut without a vote. If we don't, now, granted, this bill couldn't handle that because of the Byrd rules. We couldn't vote on that. But the rest of the budget, which is significant, we did very little on Medicaid reform. Now, I know people got upset about Medicaid, and I understand what they're worried about. But I think if you became unemployed tomorrow, you're not going to because you're a great reporter, but if you did, you'd be in unemployment line, and you have certain requirements just to get your unemployment check, which you paid into. Medicaid is not something that you necessarily paid into, but you're going to get without the same requirements you would on something you paid into. That doesn't make sense to me. By the way, as an ER physician, most people who suffer from anxiety, depression, suicidality, drug and alcohol abuse have one problem. They don't have something to live for. Being a volunteer for 20 hours a week, looking for a job, having a job, is a good thing. We shouldn't look at it as a bad thing. That's a good thing for people. It's good for your health and good for America. Why wouldn't we do something of substance? So
critics are not criticizing the people's desire to work or to volunteer, but the extra paperwork and the burden that puts on them and on states to check every 6 months as opposed to every year. Do you buy that? Do you think that's burdensome?
For me, once again, how many times do you have to get checked for unemployment? Every single month. Every single month. And yet we act like twice a year is a burdensome regulation. For me to check if you have a job, why is that such a burden when we do way more stuff than that in government every single month for people all over the United States?
Most people agree that there will be people that are coming off those Medicaid rolls, and that's where the savings are going to come from. Those people end up in the emergency room. You are an ER doctor. So those people are going to put an extra burden. It's very expensive to get ER care. And then the people that really need it are going to have longer wait times. Are you concerned about that?
Of course. But if we don't do something, I would like to hear the better idea. The Democrats don't have one. They're like, just keep it the way it is. The way it is failing us. And this is why when Democrats are all of a sudden for the first time worried about debt, that just makes me laugh. Now, neither side has been very good at managing debt. This is a bipartisan problem. We're not going to get out of it without bipartisan efforts, including on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, which is about 6% of the budget by itself. And by the way, I don't want to cut anything with Social Security. I don't want to make sure the people receiving or about to receive Social Security have got to be secure. I get that. But we have bipartisan bills out there. This is going to have to be something we address together. But tell me a better plan. Don't tell me you're going to tax your way out of this.
Well, so I was going to say, I mean, the Democrats will say, have they said on this program to raise taxes on the wealthy?
You could take all, first of all, it's a false promise. Way more billionaires give way more money to the Democrat Party than the Republican Party. Why is that?
We're talking about the taxes, though.
Yeah, I know, on those same billionaires. Why do you think that is? Because they know they can avoid those taxes. You raise the taxes, they don't get real income. The money in the bank doesn't get taxed. There's the dirty little secret, right? If I raise taxes on you, the billionaire, that just basically punishes the people who are trying to become billionaires, not the people who are billionaires. Because the people who are billionaires have money in the bank. They make money off of capital gains, and their businesses get reinvested. They have these blind trusts, these trusts for their families that then control the government and then make them more money. I read a book called Controligarchs. Excellent book on things that can be done by billionaires control the economy.
Let's talk to callers. We'll start with Robert Pittsfield, Massachusetts, Republican. Hi, Robert.
Hi, good morning. Just a quick story. When I started working in my father's butcher store, he had an accountant that was a Polish freedom fighter in World War II. And he told me to, at a young age, he told me to be very careful with the Russian people, mostly the government and the communism. And I was almost tempted to write the president a letter that he's doing the right thing now. They're not to be trusted. They're very dangerous and very, very dangerous people, trust me. So that's all I want to say. And pretty much the Communist Party, China too, but especially Russia. And he has the face of a leopard, so be careful, Putin. So thank you. He's finally doing the right thing, Trump. I thought about writing a letter, but in today's world, they probably would send the Secret Service to my house. So no, maybe not. But
Congressman.
I would say, first of all, Poland's doing it right. They have some issues right now, but in the last 15 years, the second fastest growing economy in the world. They've embraced capitalism probably better than the United States, quite frankly. They're thriving. They absorbed about 1 million Ukrainians, which they put to work because they have a thriving economy. That's something that they've emulated of ours, and I think that's something good. They left the USSR and have done the right thing. I hope Romania also falls in line with that. I worry about countries who keep on trying out communism as if it's something that'll work when it's failed over and over again. And by the way, we have a very inefficient government we're very critical of, but it's the best of the ugly babies. Democracy, as we've said in the past, democracy is the worst of all governments. It's separate everything else.
Here's Joshua in Illinois, line for Democrats. Joshua, you're on with Congressman McCormick.
Hi, Congressman McCormick. My first question is going to be regarding foreign trade policy. Why have you given up your control over foreign trade policy, particularly like Brazil? There is no emergency with Brazil, yet you see Trump levying a 50% tariff on Brazil. Why didn't you go to Congress for that kind of permission? And my second question is, how did you vote yesterday on the release of Epstein files? And my counter to that, just to go further a little bit, the reason we call you a cult is because no matter what you hear and see in the news, like Trump being friends with Epstein for 15 years, and that's maybe the reason why he won't release the files, you tend to ignore that and cover your ears and eyes. And then when it comes time to vote, you actually vote against it. So that's why we call you a cult. That's my comment.
Okay. So let's address the second first, the Epstein vote. That never happened. This is commonly placed out there on X as if it was a fact. We didn't have a vote on releasing the Epstein files yesterday. Rules Committee voted that it was out of order to bring to the floor for whatever reason. I don't know what their reasoning was, but it never came up for a vote. It was listed 211 Republicans voted against releasing the Epstein files, which, of course, I was named. We didn't have a vote. So it's misinformation, first of all.
How would you have voted if it had come up?
I already showed you. Early in the show, I said I'm full transparency. I have nothing to hide.
You would have voted yes, release the files.
Of course. I don't, unless there's something of national security, which I don't think there is. Maybe they have some reason, but they have to justify that, not me. The ball's in their court. But I'm independent thinking. I voted against the CR in December, not once, but twice. I very much have had a consistent viewpoint on Ukraine. I didn't wish-wash based on who was believing what. you'll find my thinking process is independent of everybody else's. That's why we're a democracy, we're a republic, and I'm very consistent on my thought process. I don't worry about what other people think. That's the nice thing about being authentic.
He asked about tariff
Brazil.
problems.
Yeah. So Brazil, actually, I'm very good friends with Eduardo Bolsonaro, and very much feel for the people of Brazil, who I think have a horrible leadership problem in their political world right now. I think I'm very critical of their Supreme Court, but that has nothing to do with the tariffs per se, except for the way we do trade. I'm sure the president will release his reasoning once everything's finalized. I don't know that we have a finalized product of Brazil. I haven't seen it. So I can't really criticize it or encourage it based on what I know, because the details have not been released. So I'd be a little bit ahead of myself to get into the policy on tariffs, on things I don't know what's been negotiated so far and what the reasoning is. But I will be looking into it, because I'm very much a foreign policy wonk. Believe in giving it time. One thing I know about President Trump, if he sees that something's not working, that's punishing our economy, that's doing poorly, he wants his legacy to be a strong, robust economy with a shrinking deficit. That's what he wants. If he sees things going the wrong way, he will adjust. He's already shown this in tariffs already. Inflation
did go up this past time.
Of course, yeah. And by the way,
we're going to reverse course on tariffs?
I'm sorry?
Do you think he'll reverse course on tariffs?
I think if you're a Navy guy or a Marine like myself, you put in a course correction and you have to wait for a second, because you don't know exactly how it's going to affect everything for a little bit. You can't immediately adjust, otherwise you're not going to do the right thing. We're going to wait and see, and I'm sure if the president sees something bad happening, he will adjust.
So Doug was asking about where tariff policy should be set, and do you believe that belongs to Congress, and will you be taking that power back?
I hope so. First of all, I think the executive privilege benefits us greatly when President Trump is president, but then it can harm you very much when Biden's president, and I think we're out of balance right now. And that's why I'm a very big supporter of the REINS Act, or something similar to it, where we have better balance, where the president, no matter who the president is, Democrat or Republican, can't do something that has massive impact on the economy. And I know it's frustrating. By the way, I understand why people want the executive privilege, because the most efficient government of all is monarchy, or a dictatorship, or a theocracy, where one person gets to call the shots. Really efficient, really effective, but not balanced, not the way we formed our democracy. Democracy is so frustrating because it's so slow to change, but it's to keep the government from becoming more powerful than the people. That's the founding fathers and the beauty of what they did. Now, I love it when President Trump's president. He can react very quickly to the market. He can do things that I like, but I'm not going to like it next time a Democrat takes over and I'm squealing about the same thing. So I want to be consistent in my thought. And this is why I go back to grabbing back the power and making sure we codify those things. And it's okay if the president does things temporarily by executive, but we need to codify into law the things that work. And I hope we're really good about that, especially as we progress in this legislative body, in this Congress, that we actually balance back the power.
Doug in Newcastle, Delaware, Republican. You're on, Doug.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I'm happy to talk with a member of Congress and the Congressional Congress caucus there. I'm just a little interested when people talk about being deficit hawks and policy wonks, and they seem to just disregard how quickly the effect of some of these votes is going to come up. Starting October 1st, because of pay-go, those cuts are going to start not just on Medicaid, but Medicare. And we're talking about, billions of dollars, something like $45 billion in cuts, like 4% cap. If you look at what was just decreed to be spent, I don't understand why you're hedging your bet and pretending like you're not in the cold when you voted yes on something that goes against what you say you believe in. You guys expanded the budget of ICE to $150 billion. That money could go to take care of people in your own district. I mean, if you put it this way, I don't know how many people are in your district, but let's say you average 14% of everybody's district is Medicare or Medicaid. How much of a margin did you win your seat by? Are you going to run against the president? Do you have the wherewithal to do that when it's time for you to do the right thing?
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, in my state, I probably had the best results of anybody in Congress. So not worried about that. I do try to do the right thing. I try to communicate it very well and balanced and informatively. When you talk about Medicare, that was a false statement. We're not cutting Medicare. We didn't even have that considered in the budget because it's outside the Byrd rules. So there's a lot of misinformation on there, and this is what's frustrating. And just like we talked about the last caller, the Epstein files. You voted. Why did you vote against it? I didn't vote against it. That's misinformation. Careful what you read out there. Believe only half of what you see and none of what you hear. Verify. Don't trust. We didn't cut anything on Medicare. Medicaid has some small rescissions, most of it basically just requiring people to either look for work or have a part-time job or volunteer. That's not a tall order. And as a matter of fact, anybody who thinks that going back to work and it's not on people who are single moms with kids under 7. It's not for people who have permanent disabilities. This is for people who can work. It's not an unreasonable expectation to say if you're sitting at home and you're asking mom to make a sandwich and you're above the age of 18, it's not a good, healthy lifestyle. I want what's best for you. I'm not asking something from you I wouldn't ask for my own children or my own family or for myself. This is not hypocrisy. This is what's good for America. We have to have a plan. If we're not, Medicaid is supposed to be a state-run program. Now we have the federal government paying up to 90% of some states' bill. It used to be that 1/3 of all government spending was from the federal government. Now it's 2/3. And we're spending about $3 trillion more per year than we're taking in. That's going to be devastating to your children. If we don't do something for America right now to correct that course, we will not have our place in history for very much longer. We're going to have not just a recession, a severe depression if we don't do something about the deficit and the debt in the near future.
I want to ask you about Afghanistan because you served there as a Marine. Do you think that the Afghans that helped U.S. forces that are now in the United States should have protection here in the United States and get green cards and be able to stay permanently?
Absolutely. And
their families?
Absolutely. So I have a great heart for Afghanis, especially the people who paid the price. When Joe Biden decided to do that ill-gotten withdrawal from Afghanistan, and you saw the devastation and the horrible way it was done, from a point of weakness, announcing to your enemies that you're going to, after a 20-year investment, $2 trillion investment, 2,465 lives lost, countless brain injuries, limbs lost, months and years away from our families, to give it back to the same people we took it from? Are you kidding me? We had fewer people there than we had in Spain. Now, we've never fought a war in Spain. We had paid the price on this. And once again, I'm consistent on that. I don't care who president is. I don't care who the president is. This is doing the right thing. When you make a promise to somebody, just like your kids, you say, you make a promise, you stick by it. These people put their lives on the line, fight for their country. They were losing tens of thousands of people over the course of years. Even when I was there, they were ones losing lives, not us. In the last year that I was there in 2016, almost all the casualties, I only was allowed to treat special forces and dignitaries and American and NATO forces. The vast majority of Afghanis who were harmed went to the local hospitals treated by the Afghanis. They were picking up all the costs. But I will say that those patriots, those men and women who fought alongside of us in good faith, see the world very much like us, wanted to protect their country from communists, from Taliban, from bad people who would take away their rights, who see the world just like us. They deserve our loyalty. They were willing, if they go sent back to Afghanistan, they will be executed. And if they're sent somewhere else in the world, once again, they in good faith fought alongside us knowing that we are friends, and that's something we should take very seriously. Or why would anybody fight alongside us anymore in the future? We give our word. It doesn't matter if it's to Ukraine or Afghanistan or anybody else. You give your word, you stick by it. That's America.
Here's Franklin in Washington, D.C., Independent Line. Good morning.
Rich, thanks for taking my call. We've spoken in the past, and I completely agree with you about giving your word, and you said earlier about needing to verify. I followed you and I've followed MAGA very closely, and I consider myself ultra MAGA, and I agree. There's one gender, and there's a lot of identity theft with all these illegals in the country, and I just wonder, when are we going to get to the bottom of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Dog the Bounty Hunter? We've never seen them in the same room together.
Oh, come on, Franklin. Patty, Louisville, Kentucky, Democrat. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Congressman McCormick. I have several things I'd like to ask you. I want to start with immigration. Are you there?
Yes. Keep going, Patty.
Okay. I know that I'm just like anyone else. I don't think that people should just be able to come into our country anytime they want for any reason they want. But when Donald Trump was campaigning, his main thing was to get out the murderers, the rapists, the mental institution people, the prisoners that were sent here. Okay, a lot of people that he is taking are not these criminals. A lot of immigrants in this country are not criminals. I would say the vast majority of them are not criminals. And many of them have been here for decades, and they contribute tax money to this country. They do jobs, unfortunately, that Americans won't do. And I just wonder how you feel about the way that he is taking these immigrants out of their jobs.
I appreciate you asking that. Let me address that kind of in maybe a little more well-rounded perspective than you're used to from a politician. First of all, the business of America is business. Calvin Coolidge said that about 100 years ago. It's good to have a robust immigration policy that supports American business, not in a bad way that undercuts the economy or undercuts employment of Americans, because that's got to come first. We need to make sure Americans are employed. But you're right. We don't have enough people. We have a shrinking population. We don't have enough people for all the people we need in the military, IT, agriculture, hotels, healthcare, construction. If we have a robust economy, the economy is growing by 4%, as the president's goal has been, we're going to need to right-size our legal immigration system, where we know everybody who's coming in the country, why they're here, and how they fit into our country. We don't want people coming here, as you said, just because they want to skip over 3 other countries to get here because they want to live in America. That doesn't make sense for America. But if we bring people based on business needs, and that can flux, by the way, you may have to go home the next year because our economy shrinks. And by the way, if we have Americans that can fill that job, that should always come first. But I agree with you. We have people who've been here for decades, they're supplying jobs. That doesn't mean they should be given citizenship. Maybe they pay a fine. But I think most Americans, about 70% of Americans, believe that people who've been here for generations, or obviously you're American if you've been here for generations, but if you came here, you're doing the right thing, that there should be some sort of path to staying in America, continuing that business, providing jobs, paying taxes, all the things you've been doing, and maybe pay a fine. We'll let the president kind of just dictate what he wants to do on policy on that. But I think when you talk about going into ag, and people are getting mad and throwing rocks at trucks for taking children into custody who are working illegally, I hope we don't encourage the fact that businesses should be employing child labor, child trafficking, human trafficking for basically slave labor. Some of these people are trafficked into the United States for slave labor to pay off their jackals who are basically bringing them in here, their coyotes, whatever you want to call them. And I think this is where we as a country have to be cognizant that this isn't just about some poor person who wants to come here. This is about 70% of the women who came across the border who were raped repeatedly. This is about over 100,000 children, well over 100,000 children disappearing. They were unaccompanied children who came into America. We don't know where they are. We don't know if they're being sex trafficked, working in the fields, or who they're with. We don't even, and a lot of children who come across the border, we don't even know if they're related to that person they were smuggled across the border with. And we used to test, and we found there was a significant number who didn't even genetically belong to that person. And so what did Biden do? He stopped testing. Shame on us. We want to scold the rest of the world on how they treat their children and their citizens, and yet we encourage that in America. Child trafficking, human trafficking, illegal employment. Shame on us. We need to do better.
Representative Rich McCormick, a Republican of Georgia and member of the House Armed Services and House Foreign Affairs Committees. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to the listeners. Semper Fi.